Welcome everyone to the World of Dragons podcast, a podcast where a dragon and his rider get together to discover, review, and discuss dragon-centric media and literature, including, but not limited to, books, movies, shows, and games, to help you dragon fans find the next world of dragons you wish to visit. I'm your host, Rei, and with me here is...
And I am Bantam, who wants to add a little correction that we haven't done a movie or game in a while.
In a while. I don't know why that made me think of a song. I don't even know any songs that have that lyric. But yes, we're gonna try. We keep saying we're gonna try a commentary track, but like, whenever we have time to do so, we're like, "Hey, do you want to play Fortnite?" Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have to sit down and just like, nope, we're doing the movie. Let's go. But yeah, anyway, we have a special treat for you guys today. We're given advanced copies of the second book in the Scales of Fate series by Shaiden Barnes, Scales of Fate 2, The Scarred Prince. It will be released on Kindle and Audible the same day I upload this episode. So if you're listening to this, then it's out. You can go and get it. Hooray! We're just recording this a few days in advance, but hooray, it's out! Because of that, we're going to do something a little different today, where this episode is going to be split into two different uploads. To be respectful to the author and not like immediately spoiling it day one, I'm just going to be uploading the spoiler-free review section today, right now, the thing you're listening to, and next week I will release the second half where we discuss the finer points of character, the plot, and what we liked and didn't like and all that in a more spoilered setting.
Yeah.
Really, really give you guys a chance to read it on your own.
Yeah.
This was actually the original concept for the podcast when I was thinking of it like 2.5 years ago. What if we just did the episodes like in halves and, give you guys time to read the book? But I'm like, nah, they're big boys. They can pause.
The other thing is that we, at the time, we were reviewing media that had already been out for a long time.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that there weren't really any pieces of media that we reviewed that were just coming out. Like, we had no exposure, so no one knew, to come to us and say, hey, I'm writing a book, So now this is kind of like, yeah, we're recording this before the book is even out. So
it feels good.
It does feel good. It's nice to a little inside baseball here. The author asked us if we'd be willing to read the advance copy, and he had us point out mistakes because there were a couple which got corrected. So it also feels good to literally help the book. So that was kind of neat. Hearing recording mistakes and being like, oh, here, chapter 14 at timestamp 702.
Most of the mistakes we had them correct were audio mistakes in the audiobook. I actually didn't find any, written mistakes, honestly.
Yeah. Which is fine, because if you're reading, dozens of hours or a dozen hours of just reading a book out loud for people, you're going to make mistakes. I don't blame the narrator at all.
I feel like there are mostly mistakes in the editing, because I'm sure he, did a couple takes and then cut and pasted stuff together.
Yeah.
But yeah. I lost my train of thought. My train's gone already. Derailed instantly.
Derailed? That's because I'm up the switch.
Yep. It was basically going to be... I was going to just, further explain, And even when we did happen to get new things, by the time I finally got around to editing it, it was already 2 months old. Because I was just that bad at getting stuff out on time. So it's but yeah. So today, episode 2 halves. If that is absolutely infuriating, I wasn't going to read the book anyway, I just want to listen to you guys, let me know. If you think this is a better system because you don't have the willpower to just pause the episode halfway through and, being forced to take a week off gives you time to read it, feedback is good. This is an experiment, and I like feedback. So, couple disclaimers. First one is, we were given the advanced copy, yes, but beyond that, no sponsorship, no bribery, no nothing. So these are our actual, real opinions. I'm not going to pull any punches, I never do. And so I just also want to explain to the author, hey, if I nitpick on something that I didn't like, don't take it too personally.
Yeah.
You have written an amazing book. I'm going to start out and just flat out say, hey, I found nothing wrong with how it was written. The prose was amazing. The grammar was impeccable. The dialogue was really well. It didn't nothing at any point felt like cringy or anything. It all felt very realistic for the setting. All the problems that I have with it, which will mostly be getting into the second half next week, most of the problems I have are just this story isn't for me specifically. Like, it's not a genre that I would have picked up, right?
Yeah. I mean,
And I'll get into more of that
disagree.
in a second.
I disagree. I think that there's enough, like, the times that we would go to Barnes and Noble and you're just hunting around for dragon books. I think you would have come across this eventually.
Well, yeah, I mean, the fact that it had dragons in it means I was going to read it no matter what. I'm talking about if you strip the dragons away, just the type of story it is not a story that I would have been drawn to. A lot of that has to do with it. It's a straight erotica. I'm not straight, right?
Oh,
But
yeah.
a big
Yeah.
thing of it, and this was like a big deal in the first book also. It kind of comes back again here, so I guess this is a disclaimer to listeners who have a taste very similar to me. It is very, how to word this in a way that doesn't come across as insensitive. Understand I'm just bad with words, okay? But it is a very girl power setting, which I do not like. All of the males are looked down on and treated poorly, and I don't like that. It doesn't feel good to me. I would prefer a setting where the guys are important. Ha ha ha, right? Sexism is only fun one way, but no, it's just like it's just a book that got on my nerves a couple of times because of a world building twist. I'm like, that doesn't make me feel good.
Yeah, I get it, and the thing is that we've read so many dragon books. It does seem overwhelmingly that with dragons specifically, it's almost always the females who have all the power, and
You
that the
know, I
males.
was gonna actually sit down and make a checklist because I didn't want to make that claim and then be completely wrong. But so I might be wrong. I'm gonna make the checklist later. Uh, but it does feel like more often than not, with dragons specifically, it's a matriarchal society, and I'm getting a little tired of it.
Yeah, males in most of these books are treated like breeding stock that have an obligation to carry on the lineage, and that's about all they're care that that's about all anyone wants out of them,
Mhm.
and it kind of feels sucky, like I can't really think of an example off the top of my head where it was a king in charge or they ruled together. It's been mostly a strong woman with a cuck husband.
Yeah, and the thing is, there's nothing wrong with a strong woman, but there is this. I feel like this universe, we'll call it, and a couple others have overcorrected too far. But yeah, like, this is a matriarchy, Wings of Fire is a matriarchy. Age of Fire didn't really have a society, but I will admit that males held all the power in that universe. Um, Honestly, like most of them, it doesn't matter. Like, the Dragon Society isn't big enough to have patriarchy or matriarchy, but the ones that do, it feels like it's more often than not matriarchy.
Yeah.
But whatever. Enough about that. Let's get back onto the tracks here. I guess a brief synopsis. We might have just skipped the brief synopsis. This is the first time I'm trying to avoid like any and all possible spoilers in the first half. Like, ooh, be super careful this time. The brief synopsis is you've most likely read the first book if you're listening to this. So this is continuing the story of the preparations for the celestial courting ceremony. We are in a different kingdom now, the
The Twilight
Twilight
Kingdom.
Kingdom. So we're following a different prince. Raz does not come up at all in the story, except maybe I think a name drop, but like he's not a character anymore. And honestly, this has very little to do with the first book, aside from the fact that it's still the celestial courting ceremony. Like, I guess there's a couple characters, but whatever. We're following a new dragon, a new chosen prince named Zargris.
Zargris, yeah.
Yeah, I keep getting like name cock blocked by Zagreus from Hades.
I will say that I also, well, I don't have that problem, but I did need to write down all their names. There are two queens in this story, Sareth and Sarsu, and I don't agree with giving both of them an S name. Because at one point in the book, when their names were coming up constantly within the same paragraph, I was like, wait, which one's which again? I forgot. So I
I
had to
feel
write
like
it down, and it kind
yeah,
of aggravated me because it's fantasy names. Like obviously if someone on the street tells you their name's Steve, it's easier to
mhm.
remember. But if they say their name is like
The thing is, I'm fine with fantasy names, but I feel like in this book there were a lot of A names and Z names.
The Elden Ring problem.
Yeah, what was the sister's name?
The sister.
Since you wrote it down.
I didn't.
Okay. The
Well,
thing is, when
because
I heard her name, I kept thinking Alice from Final Fantasy XIV. So I just kept getting name cockblocked by a lot of things, and that's not the author's fault. It's not their fault that I know Alice and I know Zagreus before I came to this book, but it's just oof.
yeah, I actually have a note written down here, and it says, well, I can't. It's spoiler. Never mind.
hmm Yeah, save that for later. But yeah, so we're following Zargris. I almost said Zagreus again. We're following Zargris as he comes to terms with being the prince, and we go through his training and his own personal trials and tribulations, which I'm not going to spoil right here. But it's following him, kind of like how the first book followed Raz. This one follows Zargris. It is an erotica book, so
Is it
yes,
like that?
well, okay, there is straight up sex. So if you are
So
like underage or you are ifed out by sex or
no,
depictions in general,
what I mean is this book advertised explicitly as erotica,
I
and the
think so.
reason.
I think the author is very proud about being like, there's dragon sex in these
Okay,
books.
all right, then that makes sense because I'll confess, as soon as sex scenes started in this book, I skipped around because I didn't need to have it described to me again and again and again.
Yeah,
So
I tuned it out a lot, and that's because again, it's straight sex. But also, honestly, I have read a lot of erotic books where I do kind of like not really look forward to the sex scenes. I want to get back to the story.
yeah,
So that's
and
honestly a good point in his favor.
it really is. I'm not saying that the sex scenes were like to me gross or unwanted. It's
Nah.
just I felt like they carried on too long. In fact, I think chapter one of the chapters was entirely sex. Um, and so I was like skipping around in it, and I just kept hearing, certain words, and I was like, all right,
Mm,
keep going, keep
yeah.
skipping.
The thing is, like, I love sex. All right, I'm very sex casual. Is how I like to explain myself. Where I feel like it shouldn't be this as taboo as it is. People should not be so Puritan and uptight about it. Like, more books need to have sex in it. If not explicitly, then at least it's kind of obvious that's what's happening because it is a natural part of life, and we shouldn't be like shamed of it. So by all means, heavily imply that these two dragons are fucking, right? You
Yeah,
don't have to show it, but it should not be like, ooh, does it
the
happen? Does it not? I don't fucking know.
the thing is I don't fault the book for it. I really don't. It's because I do the same thing for movies and TV shows. When I'm watching a movie, like an action movie, and there's always a scene where the hero takes off his shirt and some woman in the room gets aroused and then they start fucking. And it's like, all right, I just
It's
skip. I
softcore porn.
skip it. I don't care. I want to experience the story. So I'm not criticizing the book necessarily. I'm just criticizing that trope in media where there has to be a sex scene, and
Right.
I don't care.
If I can just finish my thought because I paused too long, I lost my train of thought. But like yeah, so I'm very sex positive. I'm very sex casual. I think it should be in more things, and so thank you for having it be in this book. I'm not saying putting it in was a mistake. I'm not saying you did it too much. Absolutely not. This was wonderful. Had it been gay dragons, I probably would have loved it a whole lot more. If I'm being completely honest, I think the amount of straight erotica I've been forced to read because xenoromance is very rare with an MM pairing. I think, even though I've never been with a woman, I think I'd be able to pleasure her very well. I I've just read so much. I think I know where all the buttons are.
Trust me, even though we haven't reviewed a lot of the stuff that he's talking about on this podcast, he has told me a lot about the xenoromance books that he has found, and he tells me about them because I'm interested. I very proudly have it originally started as a joke, but a monster fucker license. I think it's a fun. Aliens and monsters are cool, and it is, from his own description and from kind of casually looking myself, incredibly rare to get male romance. It's all human females and monsters. And then,
And which is it's okay because that is what the biggest audience is, and if you're trying to write to make a living, you're gonna try to appeal to the bigger audience. I get it, but woe is me. I'm gonna lament.
control, find, Control F, female, woman, girl, and replace.
So, okay, small side tangent. We need to stay on track, but small side tangent. There have been a couple of short stories that I have done that too. But
No
yeah,
shame. I've done it. When I was younger, I did it all the time.
yeah. Okay, so point being, it's an erotic book. We're following Zargris in his sexual awakening, just like Raz. He doesn't start mature, but he becomes mature. So there's the awakening, and then just him going through the lead up to the celestial ceremony, right? I remember hearing a rumor the next book is going to be from the princess's point of view, and I think that's supposed to be the start of the ceremony. So I don't think we're getting any other kingdoms with a prince going through this same thing. So to me, honestly, and I mean this in the best way possible, even though she's a piece of shit, this gives me a lot of Harry Potter vibes in the sense that the first two books are very, very similar, and then we're going to actually get into the actual meat of the story once the third book comes around.
Oh, I thought you were going somewhere else with that. I was gonna say because of the overall plot, and this isn't really a spoiler, but the overall plot is that there are is it seven kingdoms? Uh,
Yes,
I think
eight.
it's it's more than five.
Look,
There
man,
are
I absolutely love your universe. I love the little dragon kingdoms you've built, and I'll get into that more later. But please, can I have a map so I know how many kingdoms there are and where
Oh
they are?
yeah, we did mention that in the car. It's like anytime there is a giant world and a character moves around from different countries or kingdoms or even the books do, a map would be great. Even if you do
Yeah,
like what I did as a kid and drop macaroni on a table and trace them. But the overall plot of this whole story is that there is a central kingdom called the
yeah.
Celestial.
So this is Dragon Bionicle. This is Matanui. We have the central point with the wings of the different elements all around it.
So yeah, we got all the different kingdoms around it, and essentially each one of these kingdoms has to put forward a prince to satisfy the celestial ceremony, where the princess is going to pick one, and I guess there's going to be lots of combat and trials and all this other stuff. And the first two books follow two different princes from two different kingdoms, and I was really afraid until Ray told me, but I was really afraid we were going to get like six more books where we're following another prince, and it's like, no, it's really good that you're switching to the ceremony after this.
Yeah, it's definitely. It feels a little Hunger Gamesy. I remember having that thought. I'm trying to remember at what point I thought of that, but like it was very Hunger Gamesy in the sense that you have the one faction that's in charge of everyone else, and they keep the other factions in line by asking for tributes. In the Hunger Games, it was literally just the fight to the death, just as a show of power. In this, it's offering up a candidate for uh, becoming the king, the next emperor. It's a marriage candidate, whatever, but it's still, as described in the prologue, they still do it purposefully as a show of power to try to keep everyone in line. I think
Yeah.
so. Yeah,
The thing that confuses me though is why it's so important to find a prince to become emperor when the emperor basically has no power, and it guys are kind of looked down on in society. It's like I don't fully understand why it's so important when the princess should just be able to go, you'll do.
I mean, there are a couple of ideas which I'll get into in the second half because one of them involves an admission that happens in one of the future chapters that makes me go, I wonder if But it could also just be something as simple as they are very by the book Puritans. Like, in order to have a queen, you need a king. You can't ascend without becoming betrothed, married, or whatever. I think it also is just for the sake of ensuring an heir gets born.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and then again, just making a specter of it just kind of keeps everybody in check. Like, this is just an assumption. Maybe you're less likely to have revolts if you're like, oh, but you see, you could be the next emperor. Ooh, finger guns.
Yeah. It's not really a spoiler, but it's mentioned a couple times in this book that the Twilight Kingdom's never even seen the Celestials. That they live really, really close to the Celestial Kingdom, and the Celestials don't even deign to visit them or
Yeah,
speak with them.
so I think there's 9 dragons total. So the Celestials and then 8 others. It's gonna be 8 candidates for the coin ceremony because I remember there being 7 points to the weird little elemental Matanui Bionicle landmass, right? And then the Twilight specifically were at the base of the mountain. They weren't one of the spokes of the elemental wheel, let's call it. Get a little map to put on the inside cover.
Or release an art book. Or
I mean,
what do they do when they release like a a supplement? I forget what they call them.
there are several things that could be a world Bible,
Yeah, something like that.
but yeah, that's a little tall order for an indie published book.
Oh, I know. I
But yeah,
just mean when he hits it big.
all right. So Bantam, so we are supposed to be reviewing this, supposed to tell the readers how good or how bad it was without spoiling it, and in general, like, would they feel happy reading this? Is this something that they should actually absolutely get into?
Uh, I have two answers for that. The first answer is, did you read the first book? Because if you did and you really like that, you might like this one.
Yeah, like I said, Harry Potter vibes. This is as similar to the first book as the second Harry Potter book was to the first Harry Potter book. It's the same
Yeah.
general concept, the idea, same plot lines and all that.
If you did not read the first book, this book is really kind of miserable for a bit. Not in a bad, not like the book is bad, but the vibes are bad.
It's weird. Like, I feel like this book was written better than the first book.
I
Like,
agree.
its pacing and stuff, and the characters felt a bit more real and all that. But this book was definitely much harsher than the first one.
Yeah.
Like, in the first book, I think you only had really like one really harsh point, and it's when the one brother, I can't remember the brother's name, but gets his head caved in by the queen, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's really the only harsh moment.
Well, wasn't it also the
This,
fact that they were like living in a prison?
yeah, that's a weird like setting quirk that I don't really like. But this book is a lot. Bantam way to describe it as kicked puppy syndrome, which I think is the wrong term, but can probably give you the right idea. It was definitely a lot of a let's take this character and let's just keep fucking him up worse and worse and worse.
It's essentially how hard can we throw this toy against the wall without breaking it, and get it full of scuffs and marks and chipped pieces.
So, in general, like I said earlier, this book was very, very well written. Like I've said it like 3 times now because it is. It really is. We have read several indie books before, and usually we have some problems with them, like there's some weird grammar, or I'm always like, it feels like they didn't read their own thing to edit it, because like so a lot of times there's a couple sentences that flow really weird, and I can't put my finger on why. I got none of that from this. This was like, if you told me that this was like signed and published by an actual like publisher, I would believe you, because it felt
Yeah.
like a real book.
Oh yeah.
Which all books are real books, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, there are a lot of times where while you're for me, listening to a book or reading a book, whatever, where you're like, this was put together in a couple months.
Yeah, or like somebody wrote their book and then they didn't want to like reread it to edit it, or they reread it and edited it once. They did a single pass, but they really should have done like 2 or 3. And so like, you know what, close enough, click publish. Right? I got the vibe sometimes from other people, but not at all. This book was beautifully written, and the reason why I'm focusing so much on letting you guys know that it is beautifully written is because there are a lot of choices that I don't like. Some of them we'll get into in the spoiler half of this episode, but one I will tell you guys right now because it could really affect your enjoyment of the book. For whatever reason, this main character, Zargris, I feel like he has no agency. I will explain that a bit more later, but in general, he does not get to make any decisions. The plot moves on without him, and he's kind of just forced along.
Yeah.
He's taken for a ride. It would be like think of Star Wars. Luke Skywalker always wanted to leave Tatooine, right? His uncle and aunt dying was definitely a catalyst, but that didn't really force him to leave because he always wanted to leave, right? He wanted to go be a Jedi. He wanted to fight the Empire. He wanted this. He wanted that. This book would be like if in Star Wars, if Luke was instead kidnapped by Han Solo, and then like you have to go and fight Darth Vader, or else we're going to. I can't think of a good like example to pitch it, but the point is, I feel like the story in this book happened against the main character's wishes.
Yeah. It feels like the plot grabbed him by the tail and dragged him through the story.
So that could definitely hamper some people's enjoyment of it. And also, if you guys are listeners, if you have the same taste like me, I got some major lazy scales PTSD about halfway through this book.
I didn't, but I mean, you're
You
more in
didn't,
tune to
right?
that.
Look, people who have listened to this before know that I greatly dislike Becca from Lazy Scales because I feel like she overshadowed the main character. I thought that Lewis was supposed to be the main character in that book, and like you're seeing things from his point of view, and oh my god, he's just like me for real, right? And then halfway through, Becca comes along and just, hey, I'm more powerful than you, I'm better at being a dragon than you, and guess what? This story is now all about me, right? I had an epiphany halfway through this book that was very, very similar to where I was like, holy shit, Raz and Zargras were not the main characters. The main character is the princess. This book is about her, which is why she's the driving force for all the plot stuff that I feel like Zargos was taken against his will on, but which then just makes it really weird to not have it be from her point of view yet. Like, it's a really interesting way to tell the first two chapters of the story, chapters as in books, chapters of her personal story. It's really weird decision to tell the first two chapters of her story from other people's point of view. Maybe it'll pay off in the future books, but it's definitely like a don't go into this expecting Zargus to be the hero, I guess. I don't know. He's a point of view for the story to be told, but he's not the hero of his own story.
Yeah, it feels like the ensemble parts of a movie stretched out into a book, because eventually the camera's gonna fix firmly behind the princess's back, and the characters that you came to love in the first two books are gonna kind of take a back seat.
Yeah. So honestly, those are my only two writing-based complaints about the book. Was just that main character A has no agency, and fuck, I already forgot like what my points were. But the point is, those are the only what I feel are valid complaints about the book. Like it was written really well, except for these aspects, right? Any other complaints I have about the book, which you'll hear in the next half, is just personal preference on the world building. On like, I wouldn't have done this. I would have done that instead, right?
Yeah.
But it's still a very good book. There's a good chance you all will like it, especially if if you liked straight sex. I guess if you're into that sort of thing. Or oh, one other thing. So that's all for the book writing. The audio narration was generally pretty good, but my biggest complaint for the narrator, he gets a little too intense at times. Like really fucking intense.
So
Like I feel like he heard us praise the narrator for lazy skills on like it's so amazing that he's willing to yell into the microphone and it really brings out the emotion. I feel like he heard that and then went too far because he yells a lot more than he should.
was it the same one?
No,
Oh.
I'm just saying it feels like
Feels okay.
he heard that and it's like, I'm going to yell for my narration or something because
Yeah.
he yells a lot.
So the thing is that when you're narrating a book, yes, if the book says that if there's a moment where a character is feeling like unbridled rage and is lashing out, yes, absolutely scream their dialogue, which he did fucking fantastically. I absolutely loved when an angry character was speaking. This narrator did a fucking 11 out of 10 job. But there were moments in the book where I feel like because there couldn't be a musical score to rise along with the scene, his voice did. He yelled a lot of parts of the book that did not deserve to be yelled. And really, honestly, just really aggravated me because I'm like, dude, a thing is happening, and I understand that it's important to the plot, but you don't need to be yelling this thing that's happening because you're narrating actions, and actions don't have emotion behind them necessarily. And you're yelling this whole, 3 or 4 paragraphs, and you're getting louder and louder, like legitimately getting louder. I was listening to it at work, and I had my headphones on, and at one point in the story, my coworker turns and he goes, "Who are you talking? What are you listening to? Are they yelling at you?" And I was like, "No, it's just the narrator gets loud for some reason."
Sorry, I was counting chapters.
40.
Because no. Chapter 17 specifically is what I want to call out.
Oh.
There is a scene in chapter 17 which I feel was intense, not in a yelling kind of way, but in a I'm spilling my heart kind of way. And so that I feel like was actually ruined a bit by the fact that he was yelling. He turned it more in it's kind of hard to like not spoil an accident, but the point is I actually was considering like I'm gonna just read this paragraph or two and show you how I would have performed it. Because I feel like he yelled when he really shouldn't have had to yell for that scene. It would have been much better to be like a through gritted teeth kind of like grumble kind of feeling rather than the shouting match that he portrayed it as.
Yeah, there were a couple choices, and this could be the fault of the writing and the narration, where a character was described as, saying something through gritted teeth, and then the narrator just didn't pick up on that and started yelling the dialogue. Or, a character's, kind of getting angry, but like you don't need to, especially with the Queen. A lot of those scenes that I noticed happened with the Queen, where, the Queen is authoritative. And the dialogue and the direction, when it says the Queen said or hissed or whatever, and it's like, but the narrator just started getting loud.
All right, the last thing I want to say, because I just remembered this when I was counting the chapters, and this is a personal opinion, but I'm gonna share it with you all because you came with my opinions anyway. Chapters don't need to have titles anymore. That's such a 1990 thing. Right? Like, chapters can just be numbered. They don't need titles. If you really want to, fine. It's your thing. It's your book. But my complaint with having titles is I feel like they accidentally spoil stuff.
Yeah.
Like, either when you open the book and you go through, you flip past the table of contents, you might see something on accident. But even then, just at the start of the chapter, okay? Like, I don't know if I can say the chapter title. It's a chapter title, so it can't be considered that big of a spoiler, right?
I mean, you may as well. If you really think, if you decide later you don't want to do it, you can edit it out. But
okay,
are you going to talk about when we're in the car?
Yeah. So there's a chapter called "Kidnapped." Okay, the chapter title is "Kidnapped." You can turn to page 2, and it's right there on the table of contents. But even then, when you're reading your book, chapter 8, I don't know if it's chapter 8, but like chapter 8, "Kidnapped," and you're immediately like, what? Fuck? Who's getting kidnapped? Is it the main character? Is it this person that's really close to the main character? It's got to be someone the main character knows, or he wouldn't know they got kidnapped. And you start like immediately going through stuff like that. And I feel like it ruins some of the plot twist. It's not a plot twist, but like some of the investment in the plot, right? You're taking the, oh my gosh, what's happening reaction of the scene itself when the kidnapping actually happens, and you're pushing it to the front of the chapter when they see the word kidnapped. I feel like chapter titles are getting to the point where they are ruining the chapter that they are heading, because it's letting you know something that's going to happen before you should know it's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, in the context in which this happened, I realize is very situational, but Ray and I started listening to the book together in the car on a long car trip. And at one point when the chapter ended, I went to go click on the next chapter, and I accidentally clicked on the wrong one, so I skipped 2 chapters ahead and clicked on and it said, chapter blah, 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 kidnapped. And I went, oops, and I paused it, and I went back 2 chapters to the one that we were supposed to get next, and Ray went, kidnapped? Who's kidnapped? Oh, no! Like, mostly jokingly, but it's like, yeah, now that was ruined for us, and it's like, yeah, if you're flipping through the book and you're looking at how many chapters it has or something, and you see a chapter called Kidnapped, and then you see a chapter called Returned.
I mean, I'm sure a lot of people will like open to the table of contents and just do a brief scan to see how long is this book. Granted, you're holding it, you can feel how big it is, but like, still, point is, it's like, I feel like we've outgrown the need for chapter titles.
Yeah.
I really like, I want to call them book titles, but part titles, I guess. Like in Age of Fire, right? There was a part 1, part 2, part 3 to every book, and they were called like Drake, Draka, and some whatever. They had titles for the parts, but not titles for the chapters. It's like that can be fun. I don't know. Whatever. There's a rant on chapter titles there.
Well, I have a small addendum to that, and that's the fact that the first book was called The Chosen Prince. Doesn't really tell you much. Is he chosen by the ceremony? Is he chosen by his kingdom?
I'm not talking about literally book titles.
I know, but I'm going to bring up book titles because this one is called The Scarred Prince. And it's like, well, you know that he's going to get horribly mutilated at some point now.
That can't really be avoided. I mean, if you were going to try to avoid any and all spoilers in the book title, the book titles would become very dry.
No, they could have called it The Twilight Prince. Or...
Yeah, but that's a little dry. That's very. That's very. I'm gonna list off every kingdom as I go through the books.
Well,
Type of
the
title.
reason why it bothered me specifically was because there is a point in the book where he accidentally scars someone else and then spends an entire chapter and a half wondering if they're going to try to get revenge. And it's like, well, the book is called The Scarred Prince, so clearly they're going to get revenge. And so that kind of spoiled whether or not anything was going to happen to him.
I see a point, but the difference is in a chapter, it's a much smaller time frame. For an entire book, it's like, yes, it could have happened right then and there. It could also happen 5 chapters later, 10 chapters later. It could happen at the very, very end of the book. It could end up being a metaphor, like maybe he's just emotionally scarred instead, or something, right? But I do see a point. Taryn in our Discord just said, okay, what if the chapter titles are the name of the character whose perspective we're about to experience? And that is actually a very good point, because this book was all one perspective. This was all Zarga's perspective, so it doesn't mean anything here, moot point. But there are other books I have read that do jump point of views, right? My favorite erotica book specifically, it's the Pike series by Eileen Glass. I can't remember off the top of my head what the first book is called. It's like Trapped on an Alien Planet or something about slaves. I can't remember. Out of context, that's amazing. But it has 3 points of view that it jumps around between. And yes, each chapter's title is the character whose point of view you are. It's like Chapter 5, Carter. Chapter 6, Seal. Chapter 7, Carter again. Chapter 8, Pike. Right? And it's like, that is beautiful, it's perfect, and I love it. And it is actually like something that I hold against the last book we reviewed, which was the Dragon Sorcerer series, because that book tried to be just one point of view. It just wanted to follow Nico Sandumas, but they had interludes where they would jump to someone else's point of view.
Yeah.
But we got to the point where in some of the later books there were 7 interludes. I think after the second interlude, it's a bit too much at that point. They were like in some of the later books, there were 7 interludes, and each one still jumped around to 3 different point of views. And it's like, at that point, you might as well just have the other characters' point of views be chapters themselves, and then just have the chapter heading be Nico Sandumas, Cammy, Nico Sandumas, Medessa, right? I feel like that would have been much smoother than the way they tried to do it, where it's like interlude 5. And it's like, okay, come on now.
Yeah.
All right, anyway, Bantam, we've kind of ranted a bit already on this half, so we got really fast. How good was this book's believability, its realism?
I'd say 10 out of 10.
Yeah,
No,
pretty good.
we're doing a 5 scale, right?
Well, this isn't like any scale, just in general, how good was it?
Oh, it was really good. No,
Yeah.
I did really enjoy the first book, and I thought after we read the first book, I was like, yeah, this was a really decently written story. And I actually feel like the author has improved considerably.
Yep, they definitely got better. I have a couple issues with some world building points. Again, they have personal preference. One of my bigger complaints I'll get to later is on the magic system, because we get to see some celestial magic at some point. And so I have to knock some points off for realism and believability there a bit. I'll get into that later. But overall, again, the book was amazingly well written. It was very well put together. Bantam, the book's dream fulfillment, obviously it's all dragons and it's all dragon point of views. But I guess in general, did the dragons feel like dragons, or were they humans in dragon suits?
They were very much dragons, and one other thing I want to point out that I really liked about this book was there were absolutely there was no human characters, no humanoid characters, whatever. Like they were mentioned as an aside in the beginning of the book and then never brought up again, and I loved that. But I feel like the dragons were very much dragons. They were not dragons or humans in dragon suits.
It's very, very good dragon dream fulfillment. If you love dragon POVs because you feel like you're a dragon, or you want to be a dragon, or just dragons are amazing and you just want to see more of them, this was great. Absolutely felt like dragons. 10 out of 10. And then the last thing, Bantam, 0 out of 5 stars. And would you live here?
4.5 out of 5, and yes. Absolutely resounding yes, because kind of my last point, even though humanoids are mentioned as living in tandem with dragons, it also mentions, like beastmen and stuff like that living there, and it seems like everybody just kind of vibes. I like it. It
Everyone
there
vibes except for the male dragons. They don't get to
there
vibe.
isn't like a world-ending threat, but there's still enough tension in the story to be invested in. I was invested, but there isn't like oh god, the demon army is spilling forth. It did get kind of tiring with the scourge and all the skills. So it was nice to have like a self-contained, political story
There isn't a world-ending threat yet.
yet. But
Yet.
I feel like if I lived in this world, I could live a happy life, and that's what's most important to me. So I would live
But
in
you're a
this world.
guy. You can't live a happy life.
I also wouldn't be a dragon.
That okay? Valid point. Because onto me, I would also give it 4.5. Oh no, just 4 stars out of 5. But I would not live here, and you'll get to hear why in a bit. Very rarely do I say no. I wouldn't live in this universe. All right,
I think it's the opposite for me. I think for the most part, I was like, no, I wouldn't live here in a lot of them, but I would live here.
Yeah.
Well,
We
then
can
you
just
have
never
to
live
live
together.
there because, what the hell?
If I come and live here, I'm gonna completely destroy the hierarchy and just redo the governing bodies.
That's fine. I'll help you.
Awesome. All right. So thank you for joining us, everyone. Like I said at the top of the show, this is going to be uploaded in 2 different halves. So goodbye for now. This isn't going to be a simple musical number. You're going to have to wait a week. If you absolutely hate waiting a week, please reach out and yell at me and tell me to never do this again. Bantam, where can they do that?
So you can do that on our Discord, which we will have linked in the show notes. We do have an email where you can reach me directly. I have it forwarded to my personal email, so if at any point if you email, I will get it instantly, unless I'm sleeping. But the email is wadpodcastmail@gmail.com. We also do have a Ko-Fi or Ko-fi, whatever. Ko-fi.com/wadpodcast. As we mentioned, this will probably be the last time we mention it, but we decided not to go with the Patreon route anymore because taking a monthly subscription with our reduced upload schedule just didn't feel right. So now we're just taking donations, one-time basis. If you feel like tossing $1 or $2, then thank you very much.
Yeah. So yeah, next week the other half will be uploaded, and I'll see you guys there.
All right.
Go read the book and then come listen to me nitpick the world building choices. Goodbye.
Goodbye.